Hello everyone, thank you for joining me for our first dual stream. I'm so excited. So we have our dual streaming setup. So I have Twitch and I have YouTube. Yay. Very exciting. I hope you guys are all having an amazing day, night, afternoon, whatever it is where you are. I hope you guys are dealing with this heat better than I am. Bruh, it is hot here. I don't like it. I'm not made for this. Today was over 90 degrees and I couldn't do it. So we're not wearing makeup today? No, we're not doing makeup today. I was legit melting all day. I took a shower when I got home, so like my hair is still drying. We're not doing that to ourselves today. So you get full, just no filter voodoo. And we are gonna be blah, blah, blah. Not talking. Well, we are going to be talking. We're not talking about. We are going to be reading. That's the word. The rest of the Dunwich Horror from H.P. Lovecraft from the Bloodcurdling Tales of Horror and the Macabre. I don't know why I was looking over them. Like I'm missing something. Probably. I don't know. It's been a hot minute since we streamed because it's just been hot and I've not been about this life. But on the last stream we did, we read The Picture in the House and we started reading Dunwich Horror. Dunwich Horror was way longer than I expected it to be. But we are on part 11? Yeah. I think that's 11, right? Or it's a 9. Roman numerals. I used to know Roman numerals so well, but it's an I and an X. I think that's a 9. If it's before, it's one less. Yep, that's a 9, because the one before that was an 8. Okay, we're here. I got this. Thank you, Hidden. I appreciate you telling me. It was just funny because I learned how to count with no Roman numerals because my dad had a clock that was in this glass thing and I loved it because it reminded me of Beauty and the Beast, which was my favorite Disney movie growing up. But he had this clock in this glass case and I remember we broke the glass, but the clock was still there. And I learned how to count because it was in Roman numerals. So that's what I originally learned how to count on, oddly enough. Well, at least up to 12. After 12, it became a little bit weird. So we have lavender Earl Grey tea here. Pull that out. Made some tea. Because I made it in a bigger container because I did not have enough tea for last time we did this. It was a lot. So I'm gonna put this on our coaster over here. I hope you guys are having an amazing day, night, afternoon, whatever it is where you are. And we are gonna be finishing up the Dunwich Horror. If you guys missed it, it's not on a VOD on Twitch. It's a video I have on YouTube. Which, I wonder if I have the thing. Oh, no, that's not it. There's the share button. And I found some lo-fi music that we can listen to in the background. So you guys can chill with that as well. If you guys want to know what the lo-fi music is, then it's totally... Let me know. I will drop you the link. I'll send it to you. It's pretty neat. But that's the link for the YouTube Live, I think. But my page is there. You guys can look at that, at the previous one. So this is on page 125. So we're actually almost done with this story. We got pretty far in it. I was really surprised. All right. Oh, come on, post it. Save this, post it over here for later. All right. So we are on part 9 of the Dunwich Horror. Friday morning, Armitage, Rice, and Morgan set out by motor for Dunwich, arriving at the village about 1 in the afternoon. The day was pleasant, but even in the brightest sunlight, a kind of quiet dread and portent seemed to hover about the strangely domed hills and the deep, shadowy ravines of the stricken region. Now and then, on some mountain top, a gaunt circle of stones could be glimpsed against the sky. From the air of hushed fright at Osborne's store, they knew something hideous had happened, and soon learned of the annihilation of the Elmer Fry house and family. Throughout that afternoon, they rode around Dunwich, questioning the natives concerning all that had occurred, and seeing for themselves with rising pangs of horror the drear Fry ruins with their lingering traces of the tarry stickiness, the blasphemous tracks in the Fry yard, and the wounded Seth Bishop cattle, and the enormous swaths of disturbed vegetation in various places. The trail up and down Sentinel Hill seemed to Armitage of almost cataclysmic significance, and he looked along the sinister altar-like stone on the summit. At length, the visitors, apprised of a party of state police which had come from Aylesbury that morning in response to the first telephone reports of the Fry tragedy, decided to seek out the officers and compare notes as far as practicable. That's a word, yeah. Practicable. This, however, they found more easily planned than performed, since no sign of the party could be found in any direction. There had been 5 of them in a car, but now the car stood empty near the ruins of the Fry yard. The natives, all of whom had talked with the policeman, seemed at first as perplexed as Armitage and his companions. Then old Sam Hutchins thought of something and turned pale. Nudging Fred Farr and pointing to the dark, deep hollow that yawned close by. "God," he gasped, "I telled 'em not to go down into the glen, and I never thought nobody'd do it with them tracks and all that smell and the whippoorwills a-screeching down there in the dark noonday." I forgot about this speech in here until it just popped up. Wow, okay. It's fine. It's fine. We got this. A cold shudder ran through natives and visitors alike, and every ear seemed strange in a kind of instinctive, unconscious listening. Armitage, now that he had actually come close upon the horror and its monstrous work, trembled with the responsibility he felt to be his. Night would soon fall, and it was then that the mountainous blasphemy lumbered upon its eldritch course. Negodium para bunlis in tenebris. The old librarian rehearsed the formula he had memorized and clutched the paper containing the alternate one he had not memorized. He saw that his electric flashlight was in working order. Rice, beside him, took from a valise a metal sprayer of the sort used in combating insects, whilst Morgan uncased the big game rifle on which he relied, despite his colleagues' warning that no material weapon would be of help. Armitage, having read the hideous diary, knew painfully well that what kind of manifestation to expect, but he did not add to the fright of the Dunwich people by giving any hints or clues. He hoped that it might be conquered without any revelation to the world of the monstrous thing it had escaped. As the shadows gathered, the natives commenced to disperse homeward, anxious to bar themselves indoors despite the present evidence that all human locks and bolts were useless before a force that could bend trees and crush houses when it chose. They shook their heads at the visitors' plan to stand guard at the Fry ruins near the glen, and as they left, had little expectancy of ever seeing the watchers again. There were rumblings under the hills that night, and the whippoorwills piped threateningly. Once in a while, a wind, sweeping out of the cold spring glen, would bring a torch of ineffable fodder to the heavy night air, such a foreigner as all three of the watchers had smelled once before, when they stood above a dying thing that had passed for 15 years and a half as a human being, but the looked-for terror did not appear. Whatever was down there in the glen was biding its time, and the Armidid told his colleagues it would be suicidal to try and attack it in the dark. Morning came wanly, and the night sound ceased. It was a gray, bleak day with now and then drizzle of rain, and heavier clouds seemed to be piling themselves up beyond the hills to the northwest. The men from Arkham were undecided what to do. Seeking shelter from the increasing rainfall beneath one of the few undestroyed fried outbuildings, they debated the wisdom of waiting, or of taking the aggressive and going down the glen in quest of their nameless, monstrous quarry. The downpour waxed its heaviness, and distant peals of thunder sounded from far horizons. Sheet lightning simmered, and then a forky bolt flashed near at hand, as if descending into the accursed glen itself. The sky grew dark, and the watchers hoped that the storm would prove a short, sharp one, followed by clear weather. And it paints a picture. It was still gruesomely dark when, not much over an hour later, a confused babble of voices sounded down the road. Another moment brought to view a frightened group of more than a dozen men, running, shouting, and even whimpering hysterically. Someone in the lead began sobbing out words, and the Arkham men started violently when those words developed a coherent form. Oh my god, the voice choked out. It's a-going again, and this time of day it's about in a moving this very minute, and oh, the Lord knows when it'll be on us all. The speaker panted into silence, but another took up the message. Night on a hour ago, Zeb Watley heard the phone ringing, and it was Miss Corey, George's wife, that lives down by the junction. She says the hired boy Luther was out driving in the cows from the storm Adderin the big bolt when he see all the trees a-bending at the mouth of the glen, opposite side to this, and smelt the same awful smell that he smelt when he found the big tracks last Monday morning. And she says he was a swishing, lapping sound, more not what the bending trees and bushes could make. And all of a sudden, the trees along the road began to get pushed to one side, and they was an awful stomping and splashing in the mud. But mind ye, Luther didn't see nothing at all, only just the bending of trees under brush. Then forehead, where Bishop's Brook goes under the road, he heard an awful creaking and a straining on the bridge, and he says he could tell the sound of wood cracking and split, and all of the whiles he's never seen a thing, only them trees and bushes a-bending, and when the swishing Sentinel Hill. Luther, he had the guts to step up what he heard first and look aground. It was all mud and water, and the sky was dark, and the raining was wiping about the tracks about as fast as it could be. But beginning at the glen mouth, where the trees he'd moved, there was still some of them awful prints, big as barrels, like he seen Monday. At this point, the first excited speaker interrupted. But that ain't the trouble now. That was only the start. Zeb here was calling folks up, everybody, and I was a-listening, and a call from Seth Bishop's cut in. His housekeeper, Sally, was a-carrying on a fit to kill. She just seed the trees a-bending beside the road, and says they was a kind of mushy sound, like an elephant puffing and treading and heading for the house. And then she up and spoke sudden of a fearful smell, and says her boy Chauncey was a-screaming, as how it was just like when he smelt up to the Whately ruins Monday morning, and the dogs all a-barking and whining awful. And then she let out a terrible yell, and says the shed down the road had just caved in the storm he blowed it over, only the wind wasn't strong enough to do it. Everybody was listening, and we could hear lots of folks and a wire a gasping. All on count Sally, she yelled again and says the front yard picket fence he just crumbled up, though they want no sign of what done it. And everybody on the line could hear Chauncey and old Seth Bishop a-yelling too, and Sally was shrieking about that something heavy had struck the house. Not lightning, nor nothing, but something heavy against the front, and kept a-launching itself again and again, though you couldn't see nothing about the front winders, and then lines of fright deepen on every face, and Armitage, shaken as he was, had barely poise enough to prompt the speaker. And then Sally, she yelled out, "Oh help, the house is a-caving in," and on the wire we could hear a terrible crashing and a whole flock of screaming, just like when Elmer Fry's place was took, only was. The man paused, and another of the crowd spoke. That's all. Not a sound nor squeak over the phone after that. Just still like what we heard on. It got about Fords on wagons and rounded up as many able-bodied men folks as we could get at Corey's place and come up here to see what ye thought best to do. Not but what I think it's the Lord's judgment for our inadequacies that no mortal can ever set aside. Armitage saw that the time for positive action had come, and spoke decisively to the faltering group of frightened rustics. "We must follow it, boys." He made his voice as reassuring as possible. "I believe there's a chance of putting it out of business. You men know that those Whateleys were wizards. Well, this thing is a thing of wizardry and must be put down by the same means. I've seen Wilbur Whately's diary and read some of the strange old books he used to read, and I think I know the right kind of spell to recite to make the thing fade away. Of course, one can't be sure, but we can always take a chance. It's invisible. I knew it would be, but there's a powder in this long-distance sprayer that might make it show up for a second. Later on, we'll try it. It's a frightful thing to have alive, but it isn't as bad as what Wilbur would have let it be if he'd lived longer. You'll never know what the world escaped. Now we've only this one thing to fight, and it can't multiply. It can, though, do a lot of harm, so we mustn't hesitate to rid the community of it. We must follow it, and the way to begin is to go down to the place that has just been wrecked. Let somebody lead the way. I don't know your roads very well, but I have an idea that there might be a shorter cut across lots. How about it?" The men shuffled about for a moment, and then Earl Sawyer spoke softly, pointing with a grimy finger through the steadily lessening rain. "I guess you can get to Seth Bishop's quickest by cutting across the lower meddler there, wading the brook at the low place and climbing through the carriers mowing and a timber lot beyond that comes out on the upper road mighty near Seth's a little taller side." Armitage and Rice and Morgan started to walk in the direction indicated, and most of the natives followed slowly. The sky was growing lighter, and there were signs that the storm had worn itself away. When Armitage inadvertently took a wrong direction, Joe Osborne warned and walked ahead to show the right one. Courage and confidence were mounting, though the twilight of the almost perpendicular wooded hill which lay towards the end of the shortcut, and among those fantastic ancient trees they had to scramble as if up a ladder, put these quantities to a severe test. "Hey, Snoop, how you doing? How you be, yo? What is the happy haps with you? Welcome in." Snoop is on YouTube's chat right now, and yeah, we're dual streaming to Twitch and YouTube while reading H.P. Lovecraft. Doing okay. We're almost to the end of the Dunwich Horror, which is one of the stories in the collection of Lovecraft stories we have. We're just going through reading it, and last stream we did, chat picked the Dunwich Horror, and it was a really long one. So we are finishing up almost soon. How are you doing? I hope you are doing well. Oh, I lost my place. Ha, I found it. I got it. I got it. Yep. I started posting more reading type stuff on YouTube, but I figured out how to dual stream to Twitch and YouTube, so I'm like, yeah, we're gonna do both for funsies. I received a gift. Oh, you guys, I received a gift. What gift?
Horror. No normal mind can imagine.
Oh!
Something even more terrible than you.
Thank you, Hidden. I just received the Dead by Daylight Dungeons and Dragons chapter. Yeah, I just figured it out today, so I'm super excited about it. Like, you whoop whoop. And it keeps me from having to change my OBS settings from Twitch to YouTube. But thank you so much, Hidden. That was an amazing gift, and I'm super excited. Hopefully, my game will let me play it. Hopefully, they've updated that to not be buggy on my end. But I hope you're doing good, Snip. I hope it's not super hot wherever you're at. It is super hot here. It was over 90 degrees. I am not made for this 90+ degree weather. It is just stupid, and I hated it. And I'm melting, and it's still hot here, even though the sun is going down. And hopefully, it'll be better. Thank you, Snoop. I appreciate it. I hope you have a good one. Okay. So this is at length. They emerged on a muddy road to find the sun coming out. Oh, yay! Thank you. Oh, snaps. We got food. Oh, this is Steve's bunny, everybody. I looked over and I saw those giant, big, glittery eyes staring at me. So my cat is spoiled, and I bought him a bunny to attack because he kept attacking me on my arm. So it's just like, ugh. But we have food. Yes. Hidden made some taco ring, and I'm so excited. It's been so long since we've had it. Hot. You brought me up hot sauce. Oh, so good. I'm so excited. Oh, that cheese kept it together really well. I don't know if you guys could see that. Oh, that's good. That's super cheesy, and I love it. Oh, it works! Yay! And you caught oysters? That's awesome. Hi, Kai. How are you doing? How you be, yo? Oh, Hidden. This is delicious. Oh, snaps, and Ghost gets to fish too. And catches a butterfly fish at Butterfly Fish. I'm doing okay. We're doing a reading stream on both YouTube and Twitch today. I figured out how to do that, so I'm so excited. And it's been a pretty good day. It was a long day at work, but not as long as yesterday. Like, I'm doing really well. I have some taco ring, I have some tea, and yeah. The only thing I don't like is the heat. It's still really hot. I don't like it. How are you? Ah, very great. Oh, nice. It's always great when you feel like a week is over. That's like, oh, so awesome. My Friday is not until Sunday, so I get Monday off next week. I get that. I get that. This is so great. I'm so excited. On, I think, Sunday, maybe tomorrow, I'm gonna come home and just sleep. Like, Hidden's like, just turn, don't make sure you don't put on an alarm or anything, and just sleep. And I'm like, yes, that sounds so great. So great. I've been super sore lately because everybody's been ordering like super, super large packages and furniture and stuff, so I'm just like, I'm sore, I'm tired, it's hot outside, I don't like it. And I realized why I've been sneezing so much. There is all the pollen everywhere where I work, because I work outside, so it's all over. Hey, never. Super, super duper advanced. I am so excited about it. How are you doing? I eat some more of this taco ring. How you be, yo? Very nice, very nice. I need to redo that for Hidden's comics. 10 years or so? Wow. I want to say like that's a ridiculous amount of time, but I'm like, no, it's really not. Especially if you just keep everything in there. Yeah, that's not a lot of time. We have to be careful though. I had to like cellophane wrap the comic boxes, and I'm gonna have to. Oh, nice. Yeah, I have to look at some of this stuff like that for Hidden, and a comic box with like a lid, something in it, because our littlest cat, Percy, she is just full on stupid and will continuously eat at plastic. So she loves plastic bags. So like the comic book bags, like she messed up one of my Harley Quinn comics, like just a little bit, enough that I noticed, and it bugged me. And like she started chewing the bag at the side and then got through to the comic. Okay, yeah, I just need to get something for Hidden. Right now they're like cellophaned, like closed, so she can't get to them. Yeah, I'm like, this cat's stupid. We can't have any type of plastic bag that she can have, because she'll eat it. And just like, just stop. Just stop. But she won't. And she's teaching Steve how to chew on potato bags. Except I don't know if he's interested in the plastic of the bag or if he just wants to get through to the potatoes, because he is a chunky cat. Nice, I'm gonna have to look into that. Or something like it. I'm like, there has to be something. We have to be able to do something, because this is not working. Right now they're not accessible to us because of that. Oh, that was good. Well, I still have more, but it was really good. Hidden, you did an amazing job. And we got the new Dungeons and Dragons DLC for Dead by Daylight. Very great. Very great. I can't wait to play it. I'm hoping that Behavior actually listened to me when I put in my ticket saying, hey, why do you keep kicking me out of the game? I don't like it. You should stop doing that. And I can play the game. That would be fun. Vecna looks really fun to play. Hi, Kane. He knows I have food over here. All right, let's get back to the story. Hi, Kane. No, you can't have any. That's my food. You don't like it. It's spicy. Oh, we're almost to part 10. At length, they emerged on a muddy road to find the sun coming out. They were a little beyond the Seth Bishop place, but bent trees and hideously unmistakable tracks showed what had passed. Only a few moments were consumed in surveying the ruins just around the bend. It was the Fry incident all over again, and nothing dead or living was found in either of the collapsed shells which had been the Bishop house and the barn. No one cared to remain there amidst the stench and tarry stickiness, but all turned instinctively to the line of horrible prints leading on toward the wrecked Whately farmhouse and the altar-crowned slopes of Sentinel Hill. Oh, nice. I get that. That makes sense to me. Yeah, Hidden has a lot of comics. My comic collection, it contains like 5 comics. Of course. Thank you. As the men passed the site of Wilbur Whately's abode, they shuddered visibly and seemed again to mix hesitantly with their zeal. It was no joke tracking down something as big as a house and one could not see, but that had all the vicious malevolence of a demon. Opposite the base of Sentinel Hill, the tracks left the road, and there was a fresh bending and matting visible along the broad swath marking the monster's former route to and from the summit. Armitage produced a pocket telescope of considerable power and scanned the steep green side of the hill. Then he handed the instrument to Morgan, whose sight was keener. After a moment of gazing, Morgan cried out sharply, passing the glass to Earl Sawyer and indicating a certain spot on the slope with his finger. Sawyer, as less clumsy as most non-users of optical devices are, fumbled a while, but eventually focused the lenses with Armitage's aid. When he did so, his cry was less restrained than Morgan's had been. Only about 1,600 to read back? Dude, that's a lot. That is awesome, though. It's a really great comic collection. We had a box that we were starting when we moved here to the place we live now, but we haven't been able to get a lot of comics lately. Hopefully, we'll be able to get back into it once I get promoted in my job. And everything will be gravy after that. Totes. I almost said lime green date gravy, and that would be disgusting. Okay. I can talk like this. It's fine. God almighty, the grass and the bushes is a-moving, and it's going up slow, like creeping up to the top this minute. Heaven only knows what for. Then the germ of panic seemed to spread among the seekers. It was one thing to chase the nameless entity, but quite another to find it. Spells might be all right, but suppose they weren't. Voices began questioning Armitage about what he knew of this thing, and no reply seemed to satisfy. Everyone seemed to feel himself in close proximity to the phases of nature and of being utterly forbidden and wholly outside the sane experience of mankind. Part 10. In the end, the 3 men from Arkham, an old white-bearded Dr. Armitage, stocky iron-gray Professor Rice, and lean youngish Dr. Morgan, ascended the mountain alone. After much patient instruction regarding its focusing and use, they left the telescope with the frightened group that remained in the road, and as they climbed, were closely watched. Oh no! Sorry. That's bright. Oh, that's neat! Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to get hidden something like that. I like that. I need to bookmark it. Add it to my list. Okay. Part 10. As they climbed, they were watched closely by those among whom the glass was passed around. It was hard going, and Armitage had to be helped more than once. High above the tolling group, and the great swath trembled as its hellish maker repassed with snail-like deliberateness, when it was obvious that the pursuers were gaining. Curtis Whately, of the undecayed branch, was holding the telescope when the Arkham party detoured radically from the swath. He told the crowd that the men were evidently trying to get to a subordinate peak which overlooked the swath at the point considerably ahead of where the shrubbery was now heading. This indeed proved to be true, and the party seemed to gain a minor elevation only a short time after the invisible blasphemy had passed it. Then Wesley Corey, who had taken the glass, cried out that Armitage was adjusting the sprayer which Rice held, and that something must be about to happen. The crowd stirred uneasily, recalling that his sprayer was expected to give the unseen horror a moment of visibility. 2 or 3 men shut their eyes, but Curtis Whately snatched back the telescope and strained his vision to the utmost. He saw that Rice, from the party's point of vantage above and behind the entity, had an excellent chance of spreading the potent powder with marvelous effect. Those without the telescope saw only an instant's flash of gray cloud, a cloud about the size of a moderately large building, near the top of the mountain. Curtis, who held the instrument, dropped it with a piercing shriek into the ankle-deep mud of the road. He reeled and would have crumpled to the ground had not 2 or 3 others seized and steadied him. All he could do was moan half inaudibly, "Oh, great God, that... There was a pandemonium of questioning, and only Henry Wheeler thought to rescue the fallen telescope and wipe it clean of mud. Curtis was past all coherence, and even isolated replies were almost too much for him. Bigger a barn, all made of old squirming ropes, whole thing sort of shaped like a hen's egg, bigger than anything with dozen of legs, like a hog's head with a half shut up when they step. Nothing solid about it, all like jelly and made of separate or wriggling ropes pushed closest together. Great bulging eyes all over, 10 or 20 mouths or trunks sticking out along the sides, big as stovepipes, and all is tossing and opening and shutting. All gray with kinder blue or purple rings, and oh God in heaven, that half face on top. This final memory, whatever it was, proved too much for poor Curtis, and he collapsed completely before he could say more. Fred Farr and Will Hutchins carried him to the roadside and laid him on the damp grass. Henry Wheeler, trembling, turned the rescue telescope on the mountain to see what he might. Through the lenses were discernible 3 tiny figures, apparently running toward the summit as fast as the steep incline allowed. Only these, nothing more. Then everyone noticed a strangely unseasonable noise in the deep valley behind, and even in the underbrush of Sentinel Hill itself. It was the piping of unnumbered whippoorwills, and in their shrill chorus were seemed to lurk a note of tense and evil expectancy. Earl Sawyer now took the telescope and reported the 3 figures as standing on the topmost ridge, virtually level with the altar stone, but at a considerable distance from it. One figure, he said, seemed to be raising its hands over its head at rhythmic intervals, and as Sawyer mentioned the circumstance, the crowd seemed to hear a faint, half-musical sound from the distance, as if a loud chant were accompanying the gestures. The weird silhouette on the remote peak must have been a spectacle of infinite grotesqueness and impressiveness, but no observer was in a mood for aesthetic appreciation. "I guess he's saying the spell," whispered Wheeler, as he snatched back the telescope. The whippoorwills were piping wildly, and in a singular, curious, irregular rhythm, quite unlike that of the visible ritual. Suddenly, the sunshine seemed to lessen without the intervention of any discernible cloud. And it was a very peculiar phenomenon, and was plainly marked by all. A rumbling sound seemed brewing beneath the hills, mixed strangely with a concordant rumbling which clearly came from the sky. Lightning flashed aloft, and the wondering crowd looked in vain for the portents of storm. The chanting of the men from Arkham now became unmistakable, and Wheeler saw through the glass that they were all raising their arms in rhythmic incantation. From some farmhouse far away came the frantic barking of dogs. The change in the quality of the daylight increased, and the crowd gazed about the horizon in wonder. A purplish darkness, born of nothing more than a spectral deepening of the sky's blue, pressed down upon the rumbling hills. Then the lightning flashed again, somewhat brighter than before, and the crowd fancied that it had shown a certain mistiness around the altar stone on the distant height. No one, however, had been using the telescope at that instant. The whippoorwills continued their irregular pulsation, and the men of Dunwich braced themselves tensely against some imponderable menace with which the atmosphere seemed surcharged. Without warning came those deep, cracked, raucous vocal sounds which will never leave the memory of the stricken group who heard them. Not from any human throat were they born, for the organs of man can yield no such acoustic perversions. Rather would one have said they came from the pit itself, had not their source had been so unmistakably the altar stone on the peak. It is almost erroneous to call them sounds at all, since much of their ghastly infrabass timbre spoke to dim seats of consciousness and terror far subtler than the ear. Yet one must do so, since their form was indisputably though vague, that of half-articulate words. They were loud as the rumblings and the thunder above which they echoed, yet did they come from no visible being. And because imagination might suggest a conjectural source in the world of non-visible beings, the huddled crowd at the mountain's base huddled still closer and winced as if in expectation of a blow. Oh, okay. This is not real words. Yingath, Thikif na Yog-Sothoth rang the hideous croaking out of space. Yibith, Yi Ningreth. The speaking impulse seemed to falter here, as if some frightful psychic struggle were going on. Henry Wheeler strained his eye at the telescope, but only saw the three grotesquely silhouetted human figures on the peak, all moving their arms furiously in the strange gestures as their incantation drew near its culmination. From what black wells of acryonic fear or feeling, from what unplumbed gulfs of extra-cosmic consciousness or obscure long-latent heredity were those half-articulate thunder-croakings drawn? Presently, they began to gather renewed force and coherence as they grew in stark, utter, ultimate frenzy. Yagath, Inga. Hayunk, help, Father, Yog-Sothoth. But that was all. The pallid group in the road, still reeling at the indisputably English syllables that had poured thickly and thunderously down from the frantic vacancy beside the shocking altar stone, were never to hear such syllables again. Am I not? Well, if it makes you feel better, I did not pronounce any of that even remotely like what it is in the book. Man, with my luck, that would happen. Like, damn it. It's all fun and games until Ash can't remember the words to pick up the Necronomicon. Well, I couldn't pronounce the unmutterable things except for the word that Hidden taught me how to say. Okay, going back to the story. Instead, oh wait. Oh, snaps. Wait, okay. There's no more in the rest of the story. It's fine. It's fine, everybody, it's fine. Instead, they jumped violently at the terrific report which seemed to rend the hills, the deafening, cataclysmic peal whose source, be it inner earth or sky, no hearer was ever able to place. A single lightning bolt shot from the purple zenith to the altar stone, and a great tidal wave of viewless force and indescribable stench swept down from the hill to all the countryside. Trees, grass, and underbrush were whipped into a fury, and the frightened crowd at the mountain's base, weakened by the lethal fodder that seemed about to asphyxiate them, were almost hurled off their feet. Dogs howled from the distance. Green grass and foliage wilted to a curious, sickly yellow-gray, and all over field and forest were scattered the bodies of dead whippoorwills. Except when he told me how to pronounce them on stream last time, he was like, "Oh, here, this is how you say it. Let me spell out the pronunciation for you, so you can say this on the interwebs, just out to the ether." The stench left quickly, but the vegetation never came right again. To this day, there's something queer and unholy about the growths on and around the fearsome hill. Curtis Whately was only just regaining consciousness when the Arkham men came slowly down the mountain in the beams of the sunlight, once more brilliant and untainted. They were grave and quiet, and seemed shaken by memories and reflections, even more terrible than those which had reduced a group of natives to a state of cowed quivering. In reply to a jumble of questions, they only shook their heads and reaffirmed one vital fact. Very true, Hidden. Very true. I get that. The thing has gone forever, Armitage said. It has been split up into what it was originally made of and can never exist again. It was an impossibility in a normal world. Only the least fraction was really matter in any sense we know. It was like its father, and most of it has gone back to him in some vague realm or dimension outside our material universe. Some vague abyss out of which the most accursed rites of human blasphemy could ever have called him for a moment on the hills. There was a brief silence, and in that pause, the scattered senses poor Curtis Whately began to knit back into a sort of continuity, so that he put his hands on his head with a moan. Memory seemed to pick itself up where it had left off, and the horror of the sight that had prostrated him burst in upon him again. Oh my God, that half face on top of it. That face with the red eyes and the crinkly albino hair and no chin like the Whateleys. It was an octopus, centipede, spider kind of thing. But they was half-shaped man's face on top of it, and it looked like Wizard Whately's, only it was yards and yards across. He paused, exhausted, as the whole group of natives stared in a bewilderment not quite crystallized into fresh terror. Only old Zebulon Whately, who wonderingly remembered ancient things, but who had been silent heretofore, spoke aloud. 15 years gone, he rambled. I heard old Whately say as how some day we heard his child of Lanavines a calling its father's name on top of Sentinel Hill. But Joe Osborne interrupted him to question the Arkham men anew. What was it, anyhow, and however did young Wizard Whately call it out of the air it came from? Armitage chose his words very carefully. It was mostly a kind of force that doesn't belong in our part of space. A kind of force that acts and grows and shapes itself by other laws than those of our sort of nature. We have no business calling in such things from outside, and only very wicked people and very wicked cults ever try to. There was some of it in Wilbur Whately himself. Enough to make a devil and a precocious monster of him, and to make his passing out a pretty terrible sight. I'm going to burn his accursed diary, and if you men are wise, you'll dynamite that altar stone up there, and pull down all the rings of standing stones on the other hills. Things like that brought down the beings who those Whateleys were so fond of. The beings that were going to let intangibly to wipe out the human race, and drag the earth off to some nameless place for some nameless purpose. But as to this thing we've just sent back, the Whateleys raised it for a terrible part in the doings that were to come. It grew fast and big from the same reason that Wilbur grew fast and big, but it beat him because it had a greater share of the outsideness in it. You needn't ask how Wilbur called it out of the air. He didn't call it out. It was his twin brother, but it looked more like the father than he did. And that was the end of the Dunwich Horror. That was a good one. Where's my clickety-click? Found it. And mark it off or I'll read it again. Until somebody tells me I did. And I'm like, oh, snaps. Yeah, it was a good one. Thinking of the next one to read. The Outsider, Pickman's Model, In the Vault, or The Silver Key. Or The Music of Eric Zane. Those ones are shorter stories. Is Dunwich in Fallout? Arkham Horror. Is that the board game? Or the game? We have a lot of Arkham type of... What was the one we had? Oh my god. It's part of the Arkham Horror series. I think it's called Eldritch Horrors. It's one of the board games that takes like a minimum of 8 hours to play. We have that one downstairs. I think we played some of Arkham Horror. I think we have one of those board games. Eldritch Horror, yeah. So Kai, we have like half of our part of the bookshelf, a third of the bookshelf in our hallway over there is full of board games. And we don't have board games like normal board games. We have Eldritch Horror board games and we have a lot of different stuff. I don't think I played that part of the story. When I played Fallout 4, it was on PS4, and I went through the synth storyline on that one. And there was so much in that game that I was just like, I need to do all of it, and I did almost none of it. Oh, I get that. I love those types of games. Those are so fun. I think we have I don't know if we have Arkham Horror, if we have something that's next to Arkham Horror, like Arkham Horror, but like a subsection of it. I know we have a few different Lovecraft board games over there. It's been a hot minute. Since I've been working more, we haven't been playing board games as much. And then there's times where I get mad at Hidden because he always beats me in them, so I'm just like, I don't want to play anymore. Like Scrabble, I can't play Scrabble with Hidden. Alright, so we're gonna read The Outsider next. What page is that on? 37. I like that we're being able to jump around the different parts of the book. No, I probably should get something more to drink. But I am still good on food. I only ate one of the things. Were they? Oh, snaps! I'll have to look at that again. Oh. Yeah, we have that one. It's right there. Whoop, whoop. Happy accidents caught a yellow tang. All right. And clean my glasses. I keep touching my glasses. And then I'm like, why can't I see? Oh, snaps! Happy accidents caught a chicken nugget. Well, somebody should have bought it for you then. Never, like, obvious. Yeah, I like that one because it has the holographic Gambit card on the front. Yay! Kai caught a loggerhead turtle. Okay, we're gonna take a quick, like, 5 to 10 minute break. I'm gonna put on some DVD trailers and I'm gonna get something to drink. And hopefully not talk as much for a little bit because it's a lot. It's a lot. But we'll BRBs, you guys. I see you, Kate. You guys hear that noise? That's the dog. I know. Alright, everybody, we all BRBs. BRBs, BRBs. Found the button. BRBs. Oh, nice! I didn't know that. I was just like, this looks awesome. And then I looked at it and then read it. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, BRBs. I clicked the wrong button. Only 3 years? That's like for as long as I've been streaming, never. Like just about. It was pretty crazy. Well, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining me for this super awesome Lovecraft reading stream. The dog is learning bad habits from other dogs in the neighborhood. He just barked at my cute little fluffy trash panda cat. I don't appreciate it. All right, so we are gonna read The Outsider. We may read The Color Out of Space today. I don't know if we'll be able to get it. Oh, snaps! An anonymous gifter just gifted never a tear. Thank you, anonymous gifter, for gifting never a tear. And then because of that, never caught a salmon. Just woot woot. Okay. Super serial now. Except not really. This is that night the Baron dreamt of many a woe, and all his warrior guests with shade and form of witch and demon and large coffin worm were long be nightmared. And that is a quote from Keats. Unhappy is he to whom the memories of childhood bring only fear and sadness. Wretched is he who looks back upon lone hours in vast and dismal chambers with brown hangings and maddening rows of antique books, or upon odd watches in twilight groves of grotesque, gigantic, and vine-encumbered trees that silently wave twisted branches far aloft. Such a lot the gods gave to me, the dazed, the disappointed, the barren, the broken. And yet I am strangely content and cling desperately to those sere memories when my mind momentarily threatens to reach beyond to the other. I know not where I was born, save that the castle was infinitely old and infinitely horrible, full of dark passages and having high ceilings where the eye could find only cobwebs and shadows. The stones in the crumbling corridors seem always hideously damp, and there was an accursed smell everywhere, as of the piled up corpses of dead generations. It was never light, so that I used sometimes to light candles and gaze steadily at them for relief. Nor was there any sun outdoors, since the terrible trees grew high above the topmost accessible tower. There was one black tower which reached above the trees into the unknown outer sky, but that was partly ruined and could not be ascended save by a well-nigh impossible climb up the sheer wall, stone by stone. I must have lived years in this place, but I cannot measure the time. Beings must have cared for my needs, yet I cannot recall any person except myself, or anything alive but the noiseless rats and bats and spiders. I think that whoever nursed me must have been shockingly aged, since my first conception of a living person was that of something mockingly like myself, yet distorted, shriveled, and decaying like the castle. To me, there was nothing grotesque in the bones and skeletons that strewed some of the stone crypts deep down among the foundations. I fantastically associated these things with everyday events, and thought them more natural than the colored pictures of living beings which I found in many of the moldy books. From such books I learned all I know. No teacher urged me or guided me, and I do not recall hearing any human voice in all those years, not even my own. For although I've read of speech, I never thought to try to speak aloud. My aspect was a matter equally unthought of, for there were no mirrors in the castle, and I merely regarded myself by instinct as akin to the youthful figures I saw drawn and painted in books. I felt conscious of youth because I remembered so little. Outside, across the putrid moat, and under the dark mute trees, I would often lie and dream for hours about what I read in the books, and would longingly picture myself amidst gay crowds in the sunny world beyond the endless forest. Once I tried to escape from the forest, but as I went further from the castle, the shade grew denser and the air more filled with brooding fear, so that I ran frantically back lest I lose my way in a labyrinth of nighted silence. So through endless twilights I dreamed and waited, though I knew not what I waited for. Then in the shadowy solitude, my longing for light grew so frantic I could rest no more, and I lifted entreating hands to the single black ruined tower that reached above the forest into an unknown outer sky. And at last I resolved to scale the tower, fall though I might, since it were better to glimpse the sky and perish than to live without ever beholding day. In the dank twilight, I climbed the worn and age stone stairs till I reached the level where they cease, and thereafter clung perilously to small footholds leading upward. Ghastly and terrible was that dead, stairless cylinder of rock, black, ruined, and deserted, and sinister with startled bat whose wings made no noise. But more ghastly and terrible still was the slowness of my progression, for climb as I might, the darkness overhead grew no thinner, and a new chill as of haunted and venerable mold assailed me. I shivered as I wondered why I did not reach the light, and would have looked down if I dared. I'd fancy that night had come suddenly upon me, and vainly groped with one free hand for the window embrasure, that I might peer out and above and try to judge the height I attained. All at once, after an infinity of awesome, sightless crawling up and concave and desperate precipice, I felt my head touch a solid thing, and I knew I must gain the roof, or at least some kind of floor. In the darkness, I raised my free hand and tested the barrier, finding it stone and immovable. Then came a deadly circuit of the tower, clinging to whatever holds the slimy wall could give, till finally my testing hand found the barrier yielding. I turned upward, pushing the slab or door with my head. I used both hands in my fearful ascent. There was no light revealed above, and as my hands went higher, I knew that my climb was for the nonce ended, since the slab was a trapdoor of an aperture leading to a level stone surface of greater circumference than the lower tower. No doubt the floor of some lofty and capacious observation chamber. I crawled through carefully and tried to prevent the heavy slab from falling back into place, but failed in the latter attempt. As I lay exhausted on the stone floor, I heard the eerie echoes of its fall, but hoped, when necessary, to pry it up again. Believing I was now at prodigious height, far above the accursed branches of the woods, I dragged myself up from the floor and fumbled about for windows, that I might look for the first time upon the sky and the moon and the stars of which I read. But on every hand I was disappointed, since all I found were vast shelves of marble, bearing odious oblong books of disturbing size. More and more I reflected, and wondered what hoary secrets might abide in this high apartment, so many eons cut off from the castle below. Then unexpectedly my hands came upon a doorway, where hung a portal of stone, rough with strange chiseling. Trying it, I found it locked. But with a supreme burst of strength, I overcame all obstacles and dragged it open inward. As I did, there came to me the purest ecstasy I've ever known. For shining tranquility through the ornate grating of iron and down a short stone passageway from the steps that ascended from the newly found doorway was the radiant full moon, which I had never before seen save in dreams and in vague visions I dare not call memories. Fancying now that I had attained the very pinnacle of the castle, I commenced to rush up the few steps beyond the door, but the sudden veiling of the moon by a cloud caused me to stumble, and I fell my way more slowly in the dark. It was still very dark when I reached the grating, which I tried carefully and found unlocked, but which I did not open for fear of falling from the amazing height to which I had climbed. Then the moon came out. Most demoniacal of all shocks is that of the abysmally unexpected and grossly unbelievable. Nothing I had before undergone could compare in terror with what I now saw, with the bizarre marvels that sight implied. The sight itself was as simple as it was stupefying, for it was merely this. Instead of a dizzying prospect of treetops seen from a lofty eminence, there stretched around me on the level throughout the grating nothing less than the solid ground, decked and diversified by marble slabs and columns, and overshadowed by an ancient stone church whose ruined spire gleamed spectrally in the moonlight. Half unconscious, I opened the grating and staggered out upon the white gravel path that stretched away in two directions. My mind, stunned and chaotic as it was, still held the frantic craving for light, and not even the fantastic wonder which had happened could stay my course. I neither knew nor cared whether my experience was insanity, dreaming, or magic, but was determined to gaze upon brilliance and gaiety at any cost. I knew not who I was, or what my surroundings might be. Though, as I continued to stumble along, I became conscious of a kind of fearsome latent memory that made my progress not wholly fortuitous. I passed under an arch out of that region of slabs and columns and wandered through the open country, sometimes following the visible road, but sometimes leaving it curiously to tread across meadows where only occasional ruins bespoke the ancient presence of a forgotten road. Once I swarmed the swift river where crumbling mossy masonry told of a bridge long vanished. All the way up to the ground level. When it said that he got to the top of the tower and he was in a room that was larger than the bottom of the tower, I thought it was going to say he was now on the ground floor of the castle. Like he climbed all the way up to get back to the bottom. But no, this is different and it's crazier and I like it. Oh, there's my water. I swear I got something to drink. Hey Tuma, how you doing? How you be? What is the happy haps with you? I need a pillow or something for my forearms, cause owie. It's okay. No problem. Thank you for hanging out. We are reading The Outsider, and it's very good. I like it so far. I get that. That happens so easily. You can just slip into Stardew and look back up and you're like, oh snaps, it's been all day. Over 2 hours must have passed before I reached what seemed to be my goal. A venerable ivied castle in a thickly wooded park, maddeningly familiar, yet full of perplexing strangeness to me. I saw that the moat was filled in, and that some of the well-known towers were demolished, whilst new wings existed to confuse the beholder. But what I observed with chief interest and delight were the open windows, gorgeously ablaze with light and sending forth sound of the gayest revelry. Advancing to one of these, I looked in and saw an oddly dressed company, indeed, making merry and speaking brightly to one another. I had never seemingly heard human speech before and could guess only vaguely what was said. Some of these faces seemed to hold expressions that brought up incredibly remote recollections. Others were utterly alien. I now stepped through the low light into the brilliantly lighted room, stepping as I did so from my single bright moment of hope to my blackest convulsion of despair and realization. The nightmare was quick to come, for as I entered, there occurred immediately one of the most terrifying demonstrations I had ever conceived. Scarcely I had crossed the sill when there was descended upon the whole company a sudden and unheralded fear of hideous intensity, distorting every face and evoking the most horrible screams from nearly every throat. Flight was universal, and in the clamor and panic several fell in a swoon and were dragged away by their madly fleeing companions. Many covered their eyes with their hands and plunged blindly and awkwardly in their race to escape, overturning furniture and stumbling against the walls before they managed to reach one of the many doors. The cries were shocking, and as I stood in the brilliant apartment alone and dazed, listening to their vanishing echoes, I trembled at the thought of what might be lurking near me unseen. At a casual inspection of the room seemed deserted, but when I moved toward one of the alcoves, I thought I detected a presence there, a hint of motion beyond the golden arched doorway leading to another and somewhat similar room. As I approached the arch, I began to perceive the presence more clearly, and then, with the first and last sound I ever uttered, a ghastly undulation that revolted me almost as poignantly as its noxious cause, I beheld in full, frightful vividness the inconceivable, indescribable, and unmentionable monstrosity, which had, by its simple appearance, changed a merry company to a herd of delirious fugitives. I cannot even hint what it was like, for it was a compound to all that is unclean, uncanny, unwelcome, abnormal, and detestable. It was the ghoulish shade of decay, antiquity, and desolation, the putrid, dripping Eidolonian of unwholesome revelation, the awful bearing of that which the merciful earth should always hide. God knows it was not of this world, or no longer of this world. Yet, to my horror, I saw in its eaten away and bone-revealing outlines a leering, abhorrent travesty on the human shape, and in its moldy, disintegrating apparel, an unspeakable quality that chilled me even more. I was almost paralyzed, but not too much so to make a feeble effort toward flight, a backward stumble which failed to break the spell in which the nameless, voiceless monster held me. My eyes, bewitched by the glassy orbs which stared loathsomely into them, refused to close, though they were mercifully blurred and showed the terrible object but indistinctly after the first shock. I tried to raise my hand to shut out the light, yet so stunned were my nerves that my arm could not fully obey my will. The attempt, however, was enough to disturb my balance, so that I had to stagger forward several steps to avoid falling. As I did so, I became suddenly and agonizingly aware of the nearness of the carry-on thing, whose hideous hollow breathing I half fancy I could hear. Nearly mad, I found myself yet able to throw out a hand to ward off the fetid apparition which pressed so close, when in one cataclysmic second of cosmic nightmarishness and hellish accident, my fingers touched the rotting, outstretched paw of the monster beneath the golden arch. I did not shriek, but all the fetish ghouls that ride the night wind shrieked for me, as in the same second there crashed down upon my mind a single and fleeting avalanche of soul-annihilating memory. I knew in that second all that had been I remembered beyond the frightful castle in the trees and recognized the altered edifice in which now I stood. I recognized, most terrible of all, the unholy abomination that stood leering before me as I withdrew my sullied fingers from its own. But in the cosmos, there is balm as well as bitterness, and that balm is Nepith. In the supreme horror of that second, I forgot what had horrified me, and the burst of black memory vanished in chaos of echoing images. In a dream, I fled from that haunted and accursed pile and ran swiftly and silently in the moonlight. When I returned to the courtyard place of marble and went down the steps, I found the stone trap door movable. But I was not sorry, for I had hated the antique castle and the trees. Now I ride with the mocking and friendly ghouls on the night wind, and play by day amongst the catacombs of Nefrenka, in the sealed and unknown valley of Hadoth by the Nile. I know that light is not for me, save that of the moon over the rock tombs of Neb, nor any gaiety save for the unnamed feasts of Nitocris beneath the Great Pyramid. Yet in my new wildness and freedom, I almost welcome the bitterness of alienage. For although Nepenthe has calmed me, I know always that I am an outsider, a stranger in this century, and among those who are still men. This I have known ever since I stretched out my fingers into the abomination within the great gilded frame, stretched out my fingers and touched a cold and unyielding surface of polished glass. Oh, snaps! I thought that was him, but like maybe like him in the future or in the past. I didn't think that that was him in a mirror. Oh, hidden. That was a good one. Lovecraft's imagery with his words is so great. It was sad, Kai, and I was just like, oh, like he escaped the antique castle where it'd be like his tomb, or I don't know what that would be. Would that be like his resting place? And he escaped out of a portal? I could see that. I could see that. I get that. I did not know that's where that was going. That was a good one. That was a really good one. I really liked that one too. I don't know. He's a ghoul. Yes, he's a ghoul. And that tripped me out. I was just like, oh, like, no, okay, that shit was literal. Okay. Which a lot of Lovecraft stories are very literal in what they are saying. Like when he says something is undescribable, it's undescribable. I'm so used to writers using this type of, it's not flowery, but it's flowery language to kind of push you into being like, okay, we're just gonna leave this into your imagination of how fantastical this thing is and otherworldly this thing is. And no, Lovecraft is very literal of this thing came from here and this is what it's doing. Yeah, I really like that one. Like, I really like that one. That one was a really short one too. All right, we'll do one more short one, and then next week we'll start off with The Color Out of Space. So we can do Pickman's Model, In the Vault, The Silver Key, or The Music of Eric Zane. What do you guys want? Like, after those ones, we get into some pretty long ones. The Silver Key? Okay, we'll read The Silver Key. What page are you on? 59. Okay. That one was good. I want to reread it again. One of the core stories? Okay. Well, at least unlike Dunwich Horror, it is not ridiculously long. I mean, in these short story lengths. Okay, we're going to read The Silver Key. When Randolph Carter was 30, he lost the key of the Gate of Dreams. Okay, I don't know why I had trouble reading that sentence. Let's start over. We are starting The Silver Key. When Randolph Carter was 30, he lost the key of the Gate of Dreams. Prior to that time, he had made up for the prosyness of life by nightly excursions to strange and ancient cities beyond space and lovely, unbelievable garden lands across ethereal seas. But as middle age hardened upon him, he felt those liberties slipping away little by little, until at last he was cut off altogether. No more could his galley sail up the river Ukrainos past the gilded spires of Thran, or his elephant caravans tramp through perfumed jungles in Clede, where forgotten palaces with veined ivory columns sleep lovely and unbroken under the moon. Oh, okay. Well, we have to pay attention then. He had read much of things as they were and talked with too many people. Well-meaning philosophers had taught him to look into logical relations of things and analyze the processes which shape his thoughts and fancies. Wonder had gone away, and he had forgotten that all life is only a set of pictures in the brain, among which there is no difference betwixt those born of real things and those born of inward dreamings, and no cause to value the one over the other. Custom had dinned into his ears a superstitious reverence for which tangibly and physically exist, and that had made him secretly ashamed to dwell in his visions. Wise men told him his simple fancies were inane and childish, and even more absurd because their actors persist in fancying them full of meaning and purpose as the blind cosmos grinds aimlessly on from nothing to something, and from something back to nothing again, neither heeding nor knowing the wishes or existence of the mind that flicker for a second now and then in the darkness. He has his own trilogy? Oh, snaps. Okay. Well, we're gonna count this as the first one. And the first one will be a prequel when we get to it. I don't know what the first one is. What story that is. But that's neat that he has his own. Now that makes sense on why we were looking at the Lovecraft books stories on Amazon, and they all come in a set. And they're all like these little sets and everything. That makes more sense. They had chained him down to things that are, and they had then explained the workings of those things till mystery had gone out of the world. When he complained and longed to escape into twilight realms where magic molded all the little vivid fragments and prized associations of his minds into vistas of breathless expectancy and unquenchable delight, they turned him instead toward the newfound prodigies of science, bidding him find wonder in the atom's vortex and mystery in the sky's dimensions. And when he had failed to find these boons in these things whose laws are known and measurable, they told him he lacked imagination, and it was immature because he preferred dream illusions to the illusions of our physical creation. So Carter had tried to do as others did and pretended that the common events and emotions of earthly minds were more important than the fantasies of rare and delicate souls. He did not dissent when they told him that the animal pain of a stuck pig or dyspeptic plowman in real life is a greater thing than the peerless beauty of Narath with its 100 caravan gates and domes of Chasladani, which he dimly remembered from his dreams, and under their guidance he cultivated a painstakingly sense of pity and tragedy. Once in a while, though, he could not help seeing how shallow, fickle, and meaningless all human aspirations are, and how emptily our real impulses contrast with those pompous ideals we profess to hold. Then he would have recourse to the polite laughter that had taught him to use against the extravagance and artificiality of dreams, for he saw that daily life of our world is every inch as extravagant and artificial, and far less worthy of respect because of its poverty and beauty and its silly reluctance to admit its own lack of reason and purpose. In this way, he became a kind of humorist, for he did not see that even humor is empty in a mindless universe devoid of any true standard of consistency or inconsistency. In the first days of his bondage, he had turned to the gentle churchly faith endeared to him by the native trust of his fathers, for thence stretched mystic avenues which seemed to promise escape from life. Only on closer view did he mark the starved fancy and beautiful, the stale and prosely triteness, and the owlish gravity and grotesque claims of solid truth which reigned boresomely and overwhelmingly among most of its professors, or feel to the full of the awkwardness with which it sought to keep alive as little a fact of outgrown fears and guesses of the primal race confronting the unknown. See, I heard that, but I was hoping that was just thunder because it was supposed to rain today. Hi, Kane. I have no food for you. It wearied Carter to see how solemnly people tried to make earthly reality out of old myths which every step of their boasted science confuted. And this misplaced seriousness killed the attachment he might have kept for the ancient creeds had they been content to offer the sonorous rites and emotional outlets in their true guise of ethereal fantasy. But when he came to study those who had thrown off the old myths, he found them even more ugly than those who had not. They did not know the beauty that lies in harmony, and the loveliness of life has no standard amidst an aimless cosmos save only its harmony with the dreams and the feelings which have gone before and blindly molded our little spheres out of the rest of chaos. They did not see that good and evil and beauty and ugliness are only ornamental fruits of perspective, whose sole value lies in their linkage to what chance made our fathers think and feel, and whose finer details are different for every race and culture. Instead, they either deny these things altogether or transfer them to the crude, vague instincts which they shared with the beast and the peasants, so that their lives were dragged malodorously out in pain, ugliness, and disproportion, yet filled with the ludicrous pride at having escaped from something no more unsound than which still held them. They had traded the false gods of fear and blind piety for those of license and anarchy. Carter did not taste deeply of these modern freedoms, for their cheapness and squalor sickened a spirit-loving beauty alone, while his reason rebelled at the flimsy logic with which their champions tried to gild brute impulse with the sacredness stripped from the idols they had discarded. Does it, Kai? I didn't think this was gonna hit that plus spot either. I was like, whew. I don't know why I did not read Lovecraft as a teenager, but damn. I feel like I should have. But we are enjoying this together for funsies. But yeah, it hits. It hits. I'm like, ooh. Huh, okay. I understand this on a weird level. Oh, okay. Okay. He saw that most of them, in common with their cast-off priestcraft, could not escape from the delusion that life has meaning apart from that which men dream into it, and could not lay aside the crude notion of ethics and obligations beyond those of beauty. Even when all nature shrieked of its unconsciousness and impersonally unmorality in the light of their scientific discoveries, warped and bigoted with preconceived illusions of justice, freedom, and consistency, they cast off the old lore and the old way and with the old beliefs, nor ever stopped to think that the lore and those ways were the sole makers of their present thoughts and judgments, and the sole guides and standards in a meaningless universe without fixed aims or stable points of reference. I get that. I feel like that a lot more than I should, like especially lately. I'm just like, and then I gotta fight against that nihilistic urge to just be like, what's the point? What's the point? I'm just gonna sit here and just waste away.
More terrible than you.
But we're not doing that. We're sharing our feelings. It's totally fine. Yeah, Lovecraft does not help my sense of nihilism like that, because like when those bouts of depression just hit you hard and you're just like, yeah, this is it. Like, oh, I am so happy I am not dealing with that right now. Yeah, this would have been hard to read. I mean, it's hard to read because it's very long words. This is like so many $5, $10 words in here. Okay, I lost my spot for a second. Having lost these artificial settings, their lives grew void of direction and dramatic interest, till at length they strove to drown their ennui in bustle and pretended usefulness, noise, and excitement, barbaric display, and animal sensation. When these things palled, disappointed, or grew nauseous through revulsion, they cultivated irony and bitterness, and found fault with the social order. Never could they realize that their brute foundations were as shifting and contradictory as the gods of their elders, and that the satisfaction of one moment is the bane of the next. Calm, lasting beauty comes only in a dream, and this solace the world had thrown away when, in its worship of the real, it threw away the secrets of childhood and innocence. I mean, the last one was just all loneliness and adventure, and I got excited about the adventure, and then we were smack back all the way to loneliness and just I didn't know either. This is my first time reading Lovecraft at all. I love Lovecraftian things. I have read stories inspired by Lovecraft. I have watched movies and TV shows inspired by Lovecraft, which is actually why I decided to start reading Lovecraft, because I watched a terrible movie that it was just bad. It was just bad. bad. And I couldn't even finish watching it. It is called Suitable Flesh. It's on Amazon Prime Video. It is terrible. It is terrible. And the story it is based off of is in this book. It's Tuma. I can't. It's, as somebody who loves horror movies as much as I do, it is very rare for me to come across a horror movie where I'm like, you know what? No. And Suitable Flesh was a movie, I gave it till halfway. Like the halfway point, I was like, bruh, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. And Hidden had walked away, like not even halfway into this. He's like, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. And I didn't understand why until I read the book. I read the story. Bruh, that would have been... I can't imagine how differently I would have, how different of a perspective I would have had on things if I would have been reading Lovecraft as a teenager. As a teenager, I was weird as it was. I was using words to describe things that people just were staring at me weird for anyways. And like, I didn't care for Poe as much. I liked Poe, but I couldn't be like, like it's okay. Like, I like some of the things, but yes, Hidden was not having it, Tuma. Like, Suitable Flesh, it's a terrible movie. It is a terrible, terrible movie. And I read the story that it's based on. And I will read it again for this live stream. Not right now, but we will get to it. It is called The Thing on the Doorstep. And I read that in here. That's why I picked up the whole book in the first place. Well, Hidden had it, but I picked it up off of the shelf because of that story that Hidden told me it was based on. I read it, and looking back at Suitable Flesh, I'm like, that movie was such hot garbage. What the actual fuck were they thinking? What were they thinking? Like, why would they make that story? How did they get that out of the story? Like, that's what I wanted to know. Yeah, and that's why Hidden told me it pissed him off so much, because that was one of his favorite Lovecraft stories. And after reading it, I'm like, bruh, that's one of mine too. Like, I really enjoyed that story. It was really great. And I'm like, I'm not opposed to a movie being made based off of that story. But watching Suitable Flesh, I was just like, this is disgusting, gross, and feels very inappropriate. And I have the ick and cringe watching this movie. I have the ick and cringe watching it. And then the story, once I found that out, like, I can't. It was bad. It was bad. But the story is great. The story is great. Okay. Back to Kai's pick, The Silver Key. I would say it could get better, right? But this is Lovecraft, so I don't know where this story is gonna go. Amidst this chaos of hollowness and unrest, Carter tried to live as a befitted man of keen thought and good heritage. With his dreams fading under the ridicule of the age, he could not believe in anything. But the love of harmony kept him close to the ways of his race and station. He walked impassive through the cities of men and sighed because no vista seemed fully real. Because every flash of yellow sunlight on tall roofs and every glimpse of balustrated plazas and the first lamps of the evening served only to remind him of dreams he had once known, and to make him homesick for ethereal lands he no longer knew how to find. Travel was only a mockery, and even the Great War stirred him but little, though he served from the first in the Foreign Legion of France. For a while he sought friends, but soon grew weary of the crudeness of their emotions and the sameness and the earthliness of their visions. He felt vaguely glad that all of his relatives were distant and out of touch with him, for they would not have understood his mental life. That is, none but his grandfather and great-uncle Christopher could, and they were long dead. Don't be sorry, Kai. It is a great story so far, and I could be fully surprised on how it ends. Like, we just don't know. We just don't know. Yeah, the kind of ick that I felt with that movie, it was like I should be calling a number to help somebody. Like, I should be reporting this to the police. Like, somebody please save this child. I gotta say though, this is a very great depiction of depression and nihilism. Well, nihilism that becomes with depression. Like, I feel that. I can understand everything that he is saying. Like, I know that. I know that. Then he began once more the writing of books, which he had left off when dreams first failed him. But here too, there was no satisfaction or fulfillment, for the touch of earth was upon his mind, and he could not think of lovely things as he had done of yore. Ironic humor dragged down all the twilight minarets as he reared, and the earthly fear of improbability blasted all the delicate and amazing flowers in his fairy gardens. The convention of assumed pity split mawkishness on his characters, while the myth of an important reality and significant human events and emotions debased all his high fantasy into thin-veiled allegory and cheap social satire. His new novels were successful as his old ones had never been, and because he knew how empty they must be to please the empty herd, he burned them and ceased his writing. They were very graceful novels in which he urbanely laughed at the dreams he lightly sketched, but he saw that their sophistication had sapped all their life away. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, and I feel that. Like, I would have, like, as a teenager, I would have felt that more. Like, so much more. I was, like I said, I was that weird kid. I was just a weird little voodoo. I was always on the outside looking in. It was after this that he cultivated deliberate illusion and dabbled in the notions of the bizarre and the eccentric as an antidote for the commonplace. Most of these, however, soon showed their poverty and bareness, and he saw that the popular doctrine of cultism were as dry and inflexible as those of science, yet without even the slender palliative of truth to redeem them. Gross stupidity, falsehood, and muddled thinking were not a dream, and form no escape from life to mind trained above their own level. So Carter bought stranger books and sought out deeper and more terrible men of fantastical erudition, delving into arcana of consciousness that few have trod, and learning things about the secret pits of life, legend, and immemorial antiquity which disturbed him ever afterward. He decided to live on a rarer plane, furnished his Boston home to suit his changing moods, one room for each, hung in appropriate colors, furnished with the befitting books and objects, and provided with sources of the proper sensations of light, heat, sound, taste, and odor. Which is a great thing about the internet and streaming and like gaming with people, as I meet so many people that I'm like, we would have had such a large friend group as kids. Like, we would all been each other's support that was not there. Like, it was not there when I was younger. Once he heard of a man in the South who was shunned and feared for the blasphemous things he read in prehistoric books and clay tablets smuggled from India and Arabia. Him he visited, living with him and sharing his studies for 7 years, till horror overtook them one midnight in an unknown and archaic graveyard, and only one emerged where two had entered. Then he went back to Arkham, the terrible witch-haunted old town of his forefathers in New England, and had experiences in the dark amidst the hoary willows, tottering gambrel roofs, which made him seal forever certain pages in the diary of the wild-minded ancestor. But these horrors took him only to the edge of reality, and were not of the true dream country he had known in his youth, so that at 50 he despaired of any rest or contentment in the world, grown too busy for beauty and too shrewd for dreams. Having perceived at last the hollowness and futility of real things, Carter spent his days in retirement and in wistful, disjointed memories of his dream-filled youth. He thought it rather silly that he bothered to keep on living at all, and got from South American acquaintance a very curious liquid to take him to oblivion without suffering. Inertia and force of habit, however, caused him to defer action, and he lingered indecisively among thoughts of old times, taking down the strange hangings from his walls and refitting the house as it was his early boyhood, purple panes, Victorian furniture, and all. With the passage of time, he became almost glad he had lingered, for his relics of youth and his cleavage from the world made life and sophistication seem very distant and unreal. So much so that the touch of magic and expectancy stole back into his nightly slumbers. For years, those slumbers had known only such twisted reflections of everyday things as the commonest slumbers know. But now there returned a flicker of something stranger and wilder, something of vaguely awesome, immense, which took the form of tensely clear pictures from his childhood days and made him think of little inconsequential things he had long forgotten. He would often awake calling for his mother and grandfather, both in their graves a quarter of a century. Then one night his grandfather reminded him of the key. The gray old scholar, as vivid as in life, spoke long and earnestly of their ancient line, and of the strange visions of the delicate and sensitive men who composed it. He spoke of a flame-eyed crusader who learnt wild secrets of the Saracens and held him captive, and of the first Sir Randolph Carter who studied magic when Elizabeth was queen. He spoke, too, of that Edmund Carter who had just escaped hanging in the Salem witchcraft, and who had placed an antique box of a great silver key handed down from his ancestors. Before Carter awakened, the gentle visitant had told him where to find that box. That carved oak box of archaic wonder, whose grotesque lid no hand had raised for 2 centuries. In the dust and shadows of the great attic he found it, remote and forgotten, at the back of a drawer in a tall chest. It was about 1 foot square. Its Gothic carvings were so fearful that he did not marvel no person since Edward Carter had dared to open it. It gave forth no noise when shaken, but was mystic with the scent of unremembered spices. That it held a key was indeed only a dim legend, and Randolph Carter's father had never known such box existed. It was bound in rusty iron, and no means was provided for working the formidable lock. Carter vaguely understood that he would find within it some key to a lost gate of dreams, but of where and how to use it, his grandfather had told him nothing. An old servant forced the carven lid, shaking as he did so at the hideous faces leering from the blackened wood, and at some unplaced familiarity. Inside, wrapped in discolored parchment, was a huge key of tarnished silver covered with cryptical arabesques. But any legible explanation there was none. The parchment was voluminous and held only the strange hieroglyphs of an unknown tongue written with an antique reed. Carter recognized the characters as though as those he had seen on certain papyrus scroll belongings to the terrible scholar of the South who had vanished one midnight in the nameless cemetery. The man had always shivered when he read this scroll, and Carter shivered now. But he cleaned the key and kept it by him nightly in its aromatic box in ancient oak. His dreams were meanwhile increasing in vividness, and though showing him none of the strange cities and incredible gardens of the old ways, were assuming a definite cast whose purpose could not be mistaken. They were calling him back along the years, and with the mingled wills of all his fathers were pulling him towards some hidden and ancestral source. Then he knew he must go to the past and merge himself with old things. And day after day he thought of the hills to the north where haunted Arkham and the rushing Miskatonic and the lonely rustic homestead of his people lay. And the brooding fire of autumn Carter took the old remembered way past graceful lines of rolling hill and stone-wall meadow, distant vale and hanging woodland, curving road and nestled farmland, and the crystal windings of the Miskatonic, crossed here and there by rustic bridges of wood or stone. At one bend he saw a group of giant elms, among which an ancestor had oddly vanished a century and a half before, and shuddered as the wind blew meaningly through them. Then there was the crumbling farmhouse of old Goody Fowler, the witch, with its little evil windows and great roof sloping nearly to the ground on the north side. He speeded up his car as he passed it and did not slacken till he mounted the hill where his mother and fathers before her were born, and where the old white house still looked proudly across the road at the breathlessly lovely panorama of rocky slope and verdant valley, with the distant spires of Kingsport on the horizon and hints of archaic dream-laden sea in the farthest background. Then came the steeper slope that held the old Carter place he had not seen in over 40 years. Afternoon was far gone, and he reached the foot. And at the bend halfway up, he paused to scan the outspread countryside, golden and glorified in slanting floods of magic poured out by a western sun. All the strangeness and expectancy of his recent dream seemed present in this hushed and unearthly landscape, and he thought of velvet and deserted lawns shining undulant between their tumbled walls, and clumps of fairy forest setting off far lines of purple hills beyond hills, and the spectral wooded valley dripping down and shadowed to dank hollows where trickling waters crooned and gurgled among swollen and distorted roots. Something made him feel that motors did not belong in the realm he was seeking, so he left his car at the edge of the forest, and putting the great key in his coat pocket, walked up the hill. Woods now engulfed him utterly, and he knew the house was on the high knoll that cleared the trees except to the north. He wondered how it would look, for it had been left vacant and untended through his neglect since the death of his strange great-uncle Christopher 30 years before. In his boyhood, he had reveled through long visits there and found weird marvels in the woods beyond the orchard. Shadows thickened around him, for the night was near. Once a gap in the trees opened up to the right, so he saw off across leagues of twilight meadow and spied the old congregational steeple on the central hill in Kingsport. Pink with the last flush of the day, the panes of the little round windows blazing the reflected fire. Then, when he was in deep shadow again, he recalled with a start that the glimpse must have come from childish memory alone, since the old white church had long been torn down to make room for the congregational hospital. He had read of it with interest, for the paper had told about some strange burrows or passages found in the rocky hill beneath. Through his puzzlement, a voice piped, and he started again at its familiarity after long years. Old Benny Jacques Corey had been his Uncle Christopher's hired man, and was aged even in those far-off times of his boyish visits. Now he must be well over 100, but that piping voice could come from no one else. He could distinguish no words, yet the tone was haunting and unmistakable. To think that old Benji could still be alive. Master Randy, where ye be? Do you want to scare your Aunt Marthy plumb to death? Hadn't she told ye to keep nigh the place in this afternoon and get back for dark? Randy. He's the beatenest boy for running off into the woods I ever see. Half the time, a settin' mooning around and snicked in up at a timberfoot. Hey, Randy. Randolph Carter stopped in the pitch of darkness and rubbed his hand across his eye. Something was queer. He had been somewhere he ought not to be, had strayed very far away to the places where he had not belonged, and was now inexcusably late. He had not noticed the time on the Kingsport steeple, though he could easily have made it out with his pocket telescope, but he had knew his lateness was something very strange and unprecedented. He was not sure he had his little telescope with him, and put his hand in his blouse pocket to see. No, it was not there, but there was a big silver key he had found in a box somewhere. Uncle Chris had told him something odd once about an old unopened box with a key in it. But Aunt Martha had stopped the story abruptly, saying it was no kind of thing to tell a child whose head was already too full of queer fancies. He tried to recall where he had just found the key, but something seemed very confused. He guessed it was in the attic of a home in Boston, and dimly remembered bribing Parks with half his week's allowance to help him open the box and keep quiet about it. But when he remembered this, the face of Parks came up very strangely, as if the wrinkles of long years had fallen upon the brisk little cockney. Randy! Hi, Randy! A swaying lantern came around the black bend, and old Benji pounced on the silent and bewildered form of the pilgrim. Dern ye boy, sir, that ye be, ain't ye got a tongue in your head that ye can't answer our body? I've been calling these half hour, and ye must be heard me long ago. Don't ye know your Aunt Marthy's a fidget all over ye being off after dark? Wait till I tell your Uncle Chris when he gets home. Ye'd oughter know these here woods ain't no fittin' place to be trapezin' this hour. These things abroad what do nobody no good, as my grandsir knowed afore me. Come, Mr. Randy, or Hannah won't keep me supper no longer. So Randolph Carter was marched up the road where wandering stars glimmered through high autumn boughs, and dogs barked as the yellow light had small paned windows shone out at a farther turn, and the Pleiades twinkled across the open knoll where the great gambrel roof stood black against the dim west. Aunt Martha was in the doorway, and she did not scold too hard when Benji shoveled the truant in. She knew Uncle Chris well enough to expect such things of the Carter blood. Randolph did not show his key, but he ate his supper in silence and protested only when bedtime came. He sometimes dreamed better when awake, and he wanted to use that key. In the morning, Randolph was up so early and would have run off into the upper timber lot if Uncle Chris had not caught him and forced him into his chair by the breakfast table. He looked impatiently around the low-pitched room with the rag carpet and exposed beams and corner posts, and smiled only when the orchard boughs scratched at the leaded panes of the rear window. The trees and the hills were close to him and formed the gates of that timeless realm which was his true country. Then, when he was free, he felt in his blouse pocket for the key, and being reassured, skipped off across the orchard to the rise beyond, where the wooded hill climbed again to the heights above even the treeless knoll. The floor of the forest was mossy and mysterious, and great lichened rocks rose vaguely here and there in the dim light like druid monoliths among the swollen and twisted trunks of the sacred grove. Once in his ascent, Randolph crossed a rushing stream, whose falls a little way off sang runic incantations into the lurking fawns and agipans and dryads. Then he came to the strange cave in the floor's soap, the dreadful snake den which country folk shunned, and away from which Benjo had warned him again and again. It was deep, far deeper than anyone but Randolph suspected, for the boy had found a fissure in the furthest most black corner that led to a loftier grotto beyond, a haunting spectral place whose granite walls held a curious illusion of conscious artifice. On this occasion, he crawled in as usual, lighting his way with matches filched from the sitting room match safe, and edging through the final crevice with an eagerness hard to explain even to himself. He could not tell why he approached the farther wall so confidently, or why he instinctively drew forth the great silver key as he did so, but on he went, and when he danced back to the house that night, he offered no excuses for his lateness, nor heeded at least the reproofs he gained for ignoring the noontide dinner horn altogether. Now it is agreed by all the distant relatives of Randolph Carter that something occurred to heighten his imagination in his 10th year. His cousin, Ernest B. Aspinwall, Esquire of Chicago, was fully 10 years his senior, and distinctly recalls a change in the boy after the autumn of 1883. Randolph had looked on scenes of fancy that few others ever have beheld, and the stranger still were some of the qualities which he showed in relation to very mundane things. He seemed, in fine, to have picked up an odd gift of prophecy, and reacted unusually to things which, though at the time without meaning, were later found to justify the singular impressions. In subsequent decades, as new inventions, new names, and new events appeared one by one in the book of history, people would now and then recall wonderingly how Carter had, years before, let fall some careless word of undoubted connection with what was then far in the future. He did not himself understand these words, or know why certain things made him feel certain emotions, but fancied that some unremembered dream must be responsible. It was as early as 1897 that he turned pale when some traveler mentioned the French town of Belloy in Santerre, and his friends remembered it from when he was almost mortally wounded there in 1916 while serving in the Foreign Legion of the Great War. Carter's relatives talk much of these things because he has lately disappeared. His little old servant Parks, who for years bore patiently with his vagaries, last saw him on the morning he drove off alone in his car with a key he had recently found. Parks had helped him get the key from the old box containing it, and had felt strangely affected by the grotesque carvings on the box and by some other odd quality that he could not name. When Carter left, he had said he was going to visit his old ancestral country around Arkham. Halfway up Elm Mountain, on the way to the ruins to the old Carter place, they found his motor set carefully by the roadside, and in it was a box of fragrant wood with carvings that frightened the countrymen who stumbled upon it. The box held only a queer parchment whose characters no linguist or paleographer was able to decipher or identify. Rain had long effaced any possible footprints, though Boston investigators had something to say about evidence of disturbances among the fallen timbers of the Carter place. It was, they averred, as though someone had groped about the ruins at no distant period. A common white handkerchief found among forest rocks in the hillside beyond cannot be identified as belonging to the missing man. There is talk of apportioning Randolph Carter's estate among his heirs, but I shall stand firmly against this course because I do not believe he is dead. There are twists of time and space, of vision and reality, which only a dreamer can divine, and from what I know of Carter, I think he has merely found a way to traverse these mazes. Whether or not he will ever come back, I cannot say. He wanted the lands of dream he had lost, and yearned for the days of his childhood when he found the key, and I somehow believe he was able to use it to strange advantage. I shall ask him when I see him, for I expect to meet him shortly in a certain dream city we both used to haunt. It is rumored in Othar, beyond the river sky, that a new king reigns on the opal throne of Ilikvad, that famous town of turrets atop a hollow cliffs of glass overlooking the twilight sea, wherein the bearded and finny Gnori build their singular labyrinths. And I believe I know how to interpret this rumor. Certainly, I look forward impatiently to the sight of that great silver key, for in its cryptical abysses there may stand symbolized all the aims and mysteries of a blindly impersonal cosmos. Okay. So that ended better than I thought it would. That was a good choice, Kai. It did not end, like, badly so far that I know of. Since this is the second book in 3 books within this story of Randolph, I could see how it could have ended badly. Just because I'm like, all right, that could have been a thing that happened. I thought it was going to end a little depressingly, but no, it did not. I don't feel like it did. It leaves it open, but at the same time, I'm like, all right. He got to do what he wanted. He got to go back to the place of dreams that he had missed, which is very exciting. And now with the rumor of a new king that the ending narrator was talking about, which I'm like, who's that guy? Like, what's going on with that? I want to know. It does leave it open. But we got to finish the Dunwich Horror tonight. We read The Outsider. We read The Silver Key. Like, we're burning through these stories. That was very awesome. Let's see. Let me open up my handy dandy little index. So we finished 4 stories out of this book. Where's my pen? There it is. We finished 4 stories out of this book, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 stories in this book. The John Carter series, I don't think I know that series. I'll have to Google it. I probably know of it. I have a terrible problem of forgetting a lot of things. But that's very interesting. I wonder where that story goes. If he's in this dream place, like in this other dimension, and this other narrator person is talking about meeting him again in this other dimension. Like, what happens in that other dimension? Man of Mars. Okay. Oh, sci-fi. Nice. Now I'll just Google it. John Carter of Mars. There's a book. And there's movies. It looks like an interesting series. The Revolutionary Soldier. John Mars? It says John Carter of Mars is a fictional Virginian soldier who acts as initial protagonist of the Barsoom stories by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Are you talking about the narrator in the book? Oh yeah, it's a Disney movie. John Carter, a Disney movie. Transported to Barsoom. Yeah, a Civil War vet discovers a barren planet seemingly inhabited by 12-foot-tall barbarians. Finding himself prisoner of these creatures, he escapes only to encounter Wula and a princess. It does not look like it got a lot of... Just looking at it, it seems like usual Disney filler. It's like, does that make sense? Where are the reviews? See, some people gave it like 7 out of 10. I don't know. You read the... Oh, wow. That's neat. It has a Metascore of 51, the movie. 6.6 out of 10 is the usual rating. Oh, those books look interesting. I'm gonna keep that tab up so I can be like, oh yeah, add that to my TBR, which isn't getting so long, but hopefully that would be really good to read, especially if it reminds you of this story, which is very fascinating. I always love interdimensional travel. It's always one of my favorite like go-to plot story devices. All right. Well. Ooh. What's the... Ooh. Did you find something awesome hidden? Oh, yeah. Oh. Dreams in the Witch House. You were telling me about that one too. Which is funny because Hidden has read so much things, and when he tells me that I'm gonna read these and I start reading the things, he's always like, I want to tell you more about them, I want to talk to you about them, but I want to wait until you read them so I don't spoil anything for you. And that's very great. I've seen Outlander, or some of it, a little bit. That's awesome. That's very exciting. But we are gonna stop our stream here before I start reading another story, and then I'm on streaming for like ever. Time travel and interdimensional travel, like that's my jam. That's my jam, and I really enjoy books like that and stories, and I enjoy the books more than some movies, because movies have a hard time with it a lot of the time. Like, not every movie can be Stargate, so. But we are gonna stop right here. I'll be hanging out in the Discord after this, since Hidden got me the new DVD chapter release, DLC. That's the word I was looking for, DLC. I'll be probably in there trying to play. Hopefully it'll let me play. If it doesn't, I'm gonna be mad. I'm gonna chuck something. You're welcome, Kai. So this is gonna be a thing that we're doing. I'll probably switch it to every Friday. Every Friday seems to be really good. I wanted to do it on Thursdays, but I don't know why work on Thursdays is getting ridiculously long. DBDBD. so many letters. But yeah, we'll just be hanging out, but every Friday, and I'll put a reminder in the Discord. We'll stream to both Twitch and YouTube, and we'll be reading out stories. I have so many left from Lovecraft, and then after that, we're gonna probably read. Is it The King in Yellow or The King in Yellow? We have that downstairs, but we also have some short stories and everything that we're going to pull off the shelf. If you guys like more reading content, more book type content, that's on my YouTube, and you can go check that out, my YouTube channel. It's Voodoo Pickles on YouTube. And I'll hopefully talk to you guys very soon. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. You guys are amazing and awesome, and I appreciate every single one of you. I hope you guys have an amazing day, night, afternoon, whatever it is where you are, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.